You are now listening to the Voice of San Diego podcast network. For more information, visit voiceofsandiego.org/podcasts.
Hi, podcast listeners. Please join Voice of San Diego for our next member event, the rescheduled Brews and News Member Mix-Up at 5:30 p.m. Thursday, November 9th at the Museum of Man in Balboa Park. Voice of San Diego and the Museum of Man are teaming up for an evening of civic affairs, exploring the human experience, and, of course, beer. This free event is only open to Voice of San Diego and Museum of Man members, so if you're not a member already, become one today. Events like these are just one of our member benefits. To learn more, go to voiceofsandiego.org/membership for more information.
You're listening to I Made It in San Diego, Voice of San Diego's podcast about the region's businesses, the big and the small, and the people who made them what they are. I'm Dallas McLaughlin. When people think of Carlsbad, they conjure up images of polo shirts and loafers, or maybe surfers grabbing some food atop a stunning view. But over the last decade, Carlsbad has transformed its village with boutique shops, gastropubs, and nightlife. At the center of all of this change has been a little 100-seat theater producing innovative work. Heralded as San Diego's most exciting new theater by critic Pat Launer back in 2002, the theater has continued to rack up awards and honors, including 8 nominations and 3 wins at 2016's San Diego Theater Critics Circle Craig Knoll Awards. In the late 1990s, New Village Arts was just an idea that Kristianne Kurner had, a dream to run her own theater on her own terms. But her love for the stage started well before that.
I was the kid in the neighborhood pulling the wagon with the flyers that invited you to the show that I wrote, directed, and I'm starring in, and you had to come and sit into my backyard and watch that. So I've been doing theater my whole life. Went to college, started off with other majors, and then realized that no, theater is what I'm really meant to do. And graduated undergrad with a theater degree. And then I went to graduate school at the Actors Studio Drama School in New York. And I was actually in the very first graduating class of that program. And so I have my master's degree in acting from that program in New York.
So when you were, when you were at the Actors Studio, we have to ask, did you talk to Lipton? I mean, did you?
All the time.
What is your favorite word?
Sleep. What is your least favorite word? Should.
What turned
Was he there a lot?
Yeah, Jim was the dean of our school, and so we actually, my ex-husband and I were actually married by Ellen Burstyn in the basement of the New School University with Jim Lipton as like the witness to it, Jim and Arthur Penn and all kinds of people that were there at that time. Yeah, so I went through all of the inside the Actors Studio in the first 3 years. I got to share a cookie with Paul Newman at one of those, which was the highlight of my life.
Newman's Own. That's amazing.
Exactly. But we did. It was a really heady time. It was, being in New York City and being around all of these people that really created the acting style for American theater and being really influenced by that. And that was really the impetus to start my own company came from that way of working and wanting to share that way of working with as many people as I could. I got my master's degree in 97 and then moved to LA. And in 98, I had my amazing son. Jonah was born in 1998 in Los Angeles in Cedar Sinai overlooking the Hollywood sign.
Beautiful.
I know. It was awesome. And then moved up here, or down here, I should say, in 2001 to start the company.
So while you were in LA, I mean, is that a trip that you and your husband made to, hey, we're going to do this acting thing. We're going to give it a go.
Yeah, particularly him. I think the idea was that, going to become a movie star. And things don't always work out exactly how you plan. But we did want to go out to LA and I know he wanted to really give that a go. And so we were there for 3 or 4 years. And then, for me, my goal and my dream was always to run a smaller theater company.
Yeah.
And so when we were looking at what we really wanted, and especially after our son was born, it was time to start our own company and to really keep keep using the techniques that we learned at the Actors Studio, but do it in a community that could really sustain a professional theater company.
Although Kristianne was born in Yuma, Arizona, her parents retired in Carlsbad, which was also where Kristianne spent her holidays growing up. Carlsbad was the exact community she had been looking for, and she knew this was where her dream of an intimate performance space could thrive. So in 2001, armed with just a couple $1,000s, they made the move. But Carlsbad wasn't exactly ready.
They were a little afraid of art. They'd had some really bad experiences with public art in Carlsbad, namely the bars that were up by the seawall, which there was a sculpture that was put in that the public did not like at all.
So art in general, not just theater.
Right.
Okay.
So they were a little wary about, what this public art is and how we support it.
Who are these hippies coming in?
I know, right? Who are these folks coming in from out of town?
After searching for a space in town they could use for their first production, they finally landed on an unconventional building.
We actually did our first show in a converted chicken coop. No joke.
Really?
It's a historical building in Carlsbad called the Granary. That was actually a chicken coop. It was a play called Brilliant Traces.
Okay.
And it took place in a cabin in Alaska.
Anybody there? If anyone's there, let me in. Oh, person in serious trouble.
So we created the Granary, like you had to walk across the stage to enter, and we put blankets on everyone's seats, and it was very much like a site-specific piece is what it became.
So you're talking like a building that was just like a warehouse, basically, where chickens were.
Exactly, and it was small. We sat 25 people for our first show.
Wow. So, that helps ticket sales.
Yeah, right? I know, we sold out every night.
Were there weren't chickens there,
No,
right?
the chickens were long gone.
Oh, thank God. Yeah.
And it was really a great way to start now because it got us a lot of attention. We had a lot of press attention, and it right away we got to be the new kids on the block for a little bit.
After deciding they couldn't do every show in the Granary, it was time to find another home. And this new home was just as unconventional as the last.
We'd been teaching classes at the Granary, and in one of our classes was a gentleman who, with his wife is the founder of Jazzercise.
Wow.
And he said, you need to go out and talk to the women who run Jazzercise and see if they would be interested in helping you out some way. So we went out and went to the corporate headquarters of Jazzercise, which is also in Carlsbad, and we explained what we wanted to do. And they let us use their studio space in the back of their corporate headquarters for 5 years.
Wow.
And we brought in all the sets and the lights and everything, and we would do a show about 4 times a year, 3 or 4 times a year in this corporate headquarters of Jazzercise. And that's how we're here today, is thanks to that company being willing to take a chance on art. But it was a totally surreal experience for our audience because you walk through and you're walking through a fitness company, and there's huge pictures of Judy Shepard-Missett and Judy with all celebrities and all of the fitness stuff as you walked in. You kind of had to walk around a bunch of corners to get back in the back. And then it was a big empty studio space that they shot their videos on that we would transform into a theater.
During rehearsals, did you have to compete with thumping bass from the walls?
Occasionally. And our dressing room was their weight room.
No.
So people got to work out, in between scenes. It worked out okay.
Keep that heart rate up.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's amazing. And you were there for 5 years?
For 5 years.
Wow.
And thanks to them, that's how we built our reputation, not only amongst the critics, but also our patrons and the city. And really let the city have a chance to get to see that we were a legitimate company and that we were a professional artistic company. And that's really how we got to the space that we're in today.
So during that time, in the back of the Jazzercise corporate headquarters, what were some of the challenges that you guys were facing trying to build this theater company up from the ground?
Well, I think in a way it's the same things you face even to this day running a nonprofit theater. So it's always money, right? You're always having to fundraise and find new ways to be creative.
And how is that going to people to get money? We're in a Jazzercise building.
Like trying to explain.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the deal. So there's that. And then there's building audience because, you had to find your way back there. We made these handmade signs with reflectors all over them with arrows to try to get people back to where it was because it was pretty far back in the industrial area. But, we got to be really creative and try to figure out how to get around any obstacles. And Jazzercise ended up being a perfect place for us. We would teach classes there. So we had a couple of weekly acting classes, and then we had our shows that we would do. And it was, kind of magical that we were able to find that place and be there throughout. The only time we really had trouble was we were doing a play called Hatful of Rain, in which one of the characters is addicted to heroin. And one night, one of our actors left their heroin kit, their prop heroin kit, in the weight room at Jazzercise. And I guess one of the employees the next day called the police because they figured, one of the employees is having a problem here. So
you got to keep skinny somehow. After being at Jazzercise for 5 years, it was time to find a permanent home in Carlsbad. Luckily, Kristianne had one in mind.
So there was a building in Carlsbad Village that from the moment I saw it, I was like, that's where New Village Arts should be. And it's right across the street from the coaster train station down there. And it was originally built as a lumber yard. So it's got this beautiful high ceilings and this great woodwork all the way through. And it went through all kinds of different things. It was a mattress store at some point. It was a sewing store. And then it was a children's museum. I applied for this space 3 times. And this space is owned by the city of Carlsbad. So 3 times I applied for it, and the 3rd time was the charm. So the 3rd time the city, when the children's museum failed, the city allowed us to come into the space. And we're celebrating 10 years in our home in Carlsbad Village right now.
So what, when you say you were denied, what goes into a process like that? Like, why would you be denied you were a mattress store and they went with the mattress store. Like, why would you be denied that building?
Well, I think it's a lot. I think it's a big investment for the city to put their name behind something too, because it is their building. And so they need to know that we're legitimate, and they need to know that it's a professional company that they can trust, that will be financially, successful, that we can survive there, because they don't want to see something go in there again and not survive. And so again, being out at Jazzercise allowed us to build that reputation so they could know that you're getting high quality art and you're getting a company that you can trust in the space. And so I think that had a lot to do with it. And then, getting the mayor and the city council involved, and understanding of the importance of having an arts facility right in your downtown area.
So moving into the city-owned building, it had to be now we got to get some money behind this, right? I mean,
yes.
Was the city giving you any kind of a break on the rent or any?
We pay $1 a year.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. The city, it's the same kind of thing. So we were able with Jazzercise to have a company, a corporate company, believe in us enough to give us a chance to survive. And then the city of Carlsbad stepped up and did the same thing. And we pay all the maintenance into the building and things like that. We pay everything on the interior of the building, but the city helps us to be there, and we wouldn't be able to survive without that, as a small nonprofit. So it's an amazing thing to have a city that is willing to support the arts in that way.
Despite the incredible rental rate, moving into a brand new building that is not set up to be a theater can be expensive, and turning a warehouse into an intimate 100-seat theater takes a little help.
We were very fortunate in that we had a couple of major donors who really stepped up to help with the renovation of the space. Because when we took over the space, it was basically a big empty room. And I was there for putting the very first wall up in the space and the drywall in and all of that. So we were very hands-on with rebuilding the space and making it new. And then it became about doing the very best work that we could and trying to get the right people in the room to see it. And doing all of our work in the community, being a part of the Chamber of Commerce, meeting with our city council and our mayor, and making sure that we were sharing the work that we were doing so people knew about what the opportunities were in Carlsbad.
You moved into this space. It's 100 seats.
Yeah.
Is that the space that you always wanted? Did you ever want a bigger space, or were you always, I want to do intimate small theater?
I want to do theater where the audience and the actor have that magic connection, That to me is the best part of theater. And sometimes that can happen in a really big house. I remember seeing Cherry Jones in Doubt at the Civic here. And it was like everyone else in the theater disappeared and it was just me and Cherry and it was magic, But I think that there's, you have a better chance of creating that in a smaller space. And that's what I love about theater. And that's what I love about creating community as well. Because I think that one of the most important jobs of a theater company is to create an inclusive, welcoming community for everyone. From the most conservative to the most liberal, from anyone can come into the theater together as a community and have a shared experience. And there's not many places we can do that anymore. There's sporting events definitely does it.
Sure.
Church does it for a lot of people. And the theater is one of those places. And I think that especially as a nonprofit, it's important. And we have a real commitment and we have to live up to that for our community.
Community is obviously very important to you and the company. Did you expand that reach immediately in the new space?
What happened is when we got into the new space, I was still teaching at Miracosta at the time because I actually taught there for about 7 years as well. And I found that we started to shift our education more into youth. And we really focused in on teenagers and found that the way that we work seemed to respond really well with teenagers. So we went from training mostly adults to training our youth. And then we brought in Alita Barthel, who has this great program called Kids Act. And she teaches classes for kids starting at 4 years old. So we started to really get a much broader swath of people involved in theater and in acting.
And you're obviously you have your son at this time. I think he was probably like 8 or 9 or 7 or 8.
Yep.
Was he already itching to be on stage, or were you like, "Don't be an actor, son. Don't do it"?
No, what was great is I needed a place for him to be, and so that became the theater. So he actually, even for a while, had his own room at the theater. But then I started putting him in small roles in the plays we were doing because he had to be there anyway.
Yeah.
And so he played these really great smaller roles growing up until he became old enough. And then we did a production of Lord of the Flies, and he got to play Ralph in that. And it was fun to kind of watch him go from this very young child being influenced by these theater folks around him to really finding his own voice. And then what was great was he himself decided, I don't think I want to be an actor.
Wow.
So he kind of got to go through the whole process, and now he's a filmmaker.
So New Village Arts finally had their permanent home, the building Kristianne had always dreamed about. When we come back, we'll find out that just as the community was growing and everything was starting to come together, both the company and Kristianne's personal life took a massive hit.
I Made It in San Diego is brought to you by a proud sponsor of Monarch School. Monarch is a school in downtown San Diego designed to educate homeless youth. I'm Voice of San Diego's Kinsey Moreland, and I sat down with Monarch's Katie Bradle, the school's director of development, to learn more about what they do. Katie, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So with the homeless crisis surging and people seeing homelessness all around them, especially in the East Village and the downtown area, one of the questions we hear all the time, and I'm sure you hear as well, is how can I help? How can I get involved? What can I do?
Mm-hmm. Most, if not all, homeless service providers are nonprofits who rely on community support to do what they need to do best, which is support the homeless community. So a couple ways you can help us is first and foremost, visit our website, monarchschools.org, and donate what you can to support our integral programming to help our students. Secondly, if you have the time, you can volunteer with us. Volunteering, we have tutoring, we're focusing on literacy right now, and a lot of other opportunities on campus to help out. And thirdly, around the holidays, we do a big holiday gift card drive for our families, so that the holidays are more special for them. So we asked the community to donate $25 gift cards to Target to help out our students.
You can catch the rest of my interview with Katie of Monarch School at the end of the show.
Welcome back to I Made It in San Diego. I'm Dallas McLaughlin. Kristianne Kurner and her ex-husband started New Village Arts Theater in 2001 out of an old chicken granary in Carlsbad as a place dedicated to intriguing productions and strong performance. By 2010, they had built their own 100-seat theater in the heart of Carlsbad's emerging village. Everything was heading in the right direction until a little dose of reality set in.
As we were moving into our new space, I devoted all of my time to the new space, and my ex-husband didn't. And so what we had is that we got a divorce. So we got separated and we got a divorce. And going through a divorce of the founders of a company is something that's really difficult. So you add your own personal trauma over what's happening, but then you have this whole company of people that have come to recognize the company based on these two people who founded it. And when one of them leaves, what happens then? And so that was, I would say, our first major challenge was when he left the company, what do we do now? And it was really thanks to my family and to the people who were with us that got us through that, And again, for me, it always comes back to the person, to the humanity, and to those people who were willing to share of themselves even more to help the company survive what could have been something that would shut most people down.
Was there a decision made who was going to stay with New Village Arts, who was going to leave? Was it like a child to some degree?
It was actually, and the most important thing in this whole situation was my actual child, obviously. But yeah, it was very much like, and I think it felt like that to all of our actors and board members involved. It was like, oh, our parents are going through a divorce, and so yeah, it was a really, really challenging situation. But it was definitely we made the right choice as to what we needed to do at the time. It probably took a good 2 or 3 years to feel like we really had our feet back under us again. Because obviously for me as the leader, I was going through all kinds of things and changes in my life. And so also finding my own voice. For so long, it was both of us as the couple making all the decisions. And now it was me again. And so, yeah, it takes you a little bit of time to come back and find your voice and your authentic voice. And I think, honestly, that's where the theater also got a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
It's about when we started doing musicals and we started welcoming in kind of a broader range of experience was as I got my feet underneath me and the people around me helped to make that happen.
Not only were a lot of things changing for Kristianne, a lot of things were changing in Carlsbad, and New Village Arts opened at the perfect time to watch it all happen.
Carlsbad is a fantastic community, and what I saw happening is we had more and more businesses coming to Carlsbad for their headquarters because it's an amazing place to live. I mean, we're a block from the beach and we're, and all of the outdoor activities that we have in Carlsbad. But the more and more businesses that came, the more that all of those employees needed that cultural experience. And the way that you really have a healthy community is you match that. You match the great outdoor experience and all the things that you can do with your work experience with some kind of cultural experience that helps your residents and tourists, but expand their minds and use their creativity and their imagination. And so having New Village Arts right in the heart of Carlsbad Village was the perfect location to make that available. And we didn't do all fluffy work. We still don't. It was very much, we're going to do some really thought-provoking things that might make you a little uncomfortable at first, but really make you think. And then we're going to give you a big old musical that is, much more about you just get to travel with the piece. But it's that idea of really engaging your mind and your imagination.
And what was some of that work you guys were putting out? Because you're known for pushing the edge a bit.
Well, I will fully admit that in our early years, we were darker. We did 6 of Sam Shepard's family plays. He is my favorite playwright, and very sad to hear of his death last week. But we love to dig into that kind of the what makes people tick and what makes them go. So when we started, we were much more about that kind of intense exploration of what it means to be human. And we still are, but now we do it in a broader range. So that now, it took me 10 years to do a musical. So it wasn't my forte. But when we did that, the first musical we did was Into the Woods. And watching, first of all, just the amazing talent that it takes to be a musical theater performer and how many different things you have to be able to do. And then watching how those musicals affect our audience in our intimate space, because we only have 100 seats, and so when you're in our space, you are so connected to what's happening on stage. And so a musical in our space is very different than a musical at the Civic or at the Globe, where it's such a big space with so many bells and whistles. When you come see a musical at New Village Arts, it's about that connection between the actor and the audience. And so at the core of everything we've done, whether it be the really edgy Sam Shepard plays or the big musicals like Oklahoma, it's about the people. It's about the humanity on stage and how we share that. I think we were bringing a lot of people into the Village, and those people then wanted more things to do. And so the way the Village is now is just amazing to see the growth and to see the new places that have opened in the Village and how alive and vibrant it is. And I do think that we can take some of the credit for that because we were producing really quality art on a consistent basis and building our audiences to the point where, like, our current show completely sold out every single performance. And so you see that people recognize when you're doing something good down there. Yeah. They want to come down to the Village. And so I think that we were a part of that and part of helping the Village to be the place that it is today.
You're working with the Chamber of Commerce, you're doing things, you're becoming a part of the community more and more. How does that translate into actual financial stability for you guys?
Right. I think it's about what we always believed was that if we did really good quality work, then the people would help to support it. And so the emphasis was always on the work. And then it was about going out and meeting people as well. And that's where it comes to your board of directors and how important a really strong board is to a nonprofit organization. And the more that the board is involved in the community and kind of spreading the word, the better the company is. And I think we are in the shape we are in today, which is the best that we've ever been in, thanks to a really strong board of directors.
It seemed like everything was going so well, but again, this is nonprofit theater and you're never quite sure what tomorrow holds. So was there ever a time when you thought this might all end?
Completely, yeah. And I think this is true of most companies. Like, rarely do you meet a company who has like a straight uphill climb to the top. It's usually more of a roller coaster, and you have the times that you're really strong and the times that you aren't. And we had one period of time where we had a really poor management in place. I didn't do the oversight that I should have done because I was focused. We were doing this real artistic season that was really based. I was so excited. It was all based around the art, and all my focus was on the art. And what happened is I lost track of the business side of things. And unfortunately, we had a person who didn't keep books very well, is what I will say. Yeah. And we found ourselves in real trouble. So that when that person left, we were told that we had a deficit of about $25,000, and it ended up being about $160,000.
Yikes!
Yeah, which when you're talking about a company at that time was a $600,000 company, that's a lot of money and a big deficit.
And around what year was this all happening?
It was around 2012.
Okay, so
yeah, and it was one of those things where I so vividly remember like going to my parents' house and sitting down with them and saying, "This might be it.
Oh, wow.
We might not be able to survive this." And the way that we survived it, and I'll get back to it again, is once again the people. We had a gentleman step up to become the president of our board of directors, and we had a woman come in as our managing director who every single day the three of us sat down and we said, okay, how much money do we have? What do we need to pay for? How are we going to make this happen? And it was hard. Like, it was literally every single day making really, really difficult decisions. We had to lose some of the people that meant so much to us. We had to cut back on so many things. We had to change a play that we were planning to do. All things where it's really hard to hurt those people that you care about, who've become so much a part of this kind of family that you've created with your company. But we had to do it to make the company survive. And what I'm really proud of is, thanks to the hard work of this group of people, within a year, we were back to a surplus again. And since that time, we have always ended the year with a surplus, and we now have a nice reserve as well. So it's kind of, it was getting right down. I mean, literally, like, every penny was counted, and we made sure that we were being so careful with everything we did. And that's how we pulled ourselves out of that really bad situation. And I no longer get to focus just strictly artistically. That's why I'm executive artistic director, because I want to make sure that nothing like that ever happens again.
After 2012, New Village Arts climbed their way out of debt and were even able to add 3 additional full-time staff, making a total of 5. The company also features a few part-time positions and a good number of ushers and lovers of art who volunteer their time to help when they can. What are some moments where you just sat back and you're like, yeah, this is what it was all about. This is why I fought. This is why I stay here. And if you would, I'd love to hear about some of the shows that you felt that way about, because I think that's interesting for people to hear who go see plays, and you might be introducing some people to stuff they haven't heard of.
Yeah, for sure. One of my favorites that way, kind of early on, that actually straddled both places, because we did it at Jazzercise, and then we actually brought it back and did it at our place in Carlsbad Village, was a play called Sailor Song by a playwright, John Patrick Shanley, who wrote Moonstruck and a lot of other things as well, is what people know him from. But it was this beautiful piece that mixed many different elements of theater. So you had this really kind of gritty, intense scene work, and then all of a sudden they would break out in these amazing dances. And I mean, we had this gorgeous dance to Otis Redding's Try a Little Tenderness that will always be one of my favorite moments in the theater.
Oh, she may be weary. Them young girls, they do get wearied.
And with that, you got to watch the audience kind of travel on this. They didn't know the play, that most of them really didn't even know the playwright, but they like traveled on this journey of this play, and it was gorgeous. The other one that I always love, because it was just the most ridiculous time I've ever experienced in a theater, was the Full Monty.
And you could learn us everything?
Widgets on parade. Bring your own microscope.
Watch yourself, Gerald.
I don't see why the chuff not. Because you're fat, you're thin, and you're both chuffing ugly.
So doing the Full Monty in a 100-seat theater and watching and feeling the audience literally lose their minds. I mean, it didn't matter if you were male, female, straight, gay, doesn't matter. When those guys got to the point where they got naked on stage, and you don't really see everything, but that moment when the song they're singing is called Let It Go. When they let it go, the audience lost their minds. And it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And I hadn't even anticipated. Like, I was like, this show should sell well. Same thing though, sold out every single performance. We extended it a number of times. And it was because people came into the theater and they traveled on the journey of this play. And then they went outside of themselves, and to have that kind of experience is something that I think we all look for as humans, to have that experience where you feel this kind of collective joy with an entire group of strangers. And then more recently, having our say, the Delaney sisters story, and having this story of these 2 women growing up Black in the United States over the last 100 years.
How do you do? I'm Dr. Delaney. Make yourself comfortable. Stay as long as you like. We won't charge you rent.
And to have it being told this year was I was so proud to be telling the story, and so moved every time I got to see it, or every time we got to have a talk back with our audience, and how this, just listening to someone's story, you know, and taking the time to sit there with somebody for 2 hours and hear their story and give that respect it's everything. It's amazing.
Now, what sets New Village Arts apart from most theater spaces is the Foundry, which is attached to the lobby. Can you tell me a little bit more about the Foundry?
Sure. Well, I went to school for a little while outside of Washington, D.C., and I visited the Torpedo Factory in Alexandria, Virginia. And it's this great, literally old torpedo factory that was now home to a whole slew of artists, of visual artists. And you could go through and watch the artists at work and, you know, obviously purchase their art if you could, but it was also really, the focus was on it being a working studio space. And when we first took over the building, we took over half of it. And when the front part of the building became available, the city said, we are willing to give you the rest of the building if you create an arts incubator, is the word that they used. And when they said that, I thought, this needs to be like the Torpedo Factory. And so it was with that we created the Foundry Artist Studios. And we have 16 visual artists who call it home. They have 24/7 access to the building, and the public is invited in to watch them work. We're open Tuesdays through Fridays from 12 to 4. And then it's also open before and during every show that we do. So what I love about it is when you come to experience a theater show, you also get to walk through and see all of these 16 visual artists work and kind of let that part of your imagination go as well, and then go into the theater and do that. We have free art events every month with the Foundry. And it's really a fantastic place.
As NVA heads into its 17th season, Kristianne is still in charge, choosing the shows and making tough decisions. But she's quick to praise the people who make NVA what it is.
I'm still the boss, for sure. I have a fantastic managing director right now, Alex Goodman, who runs all of the financial and contractual side of things with me. And we have an amazing board of directors right now. We have and the thing I think that people don't necessarily realize with nonprofits and their board of directors is these people are all volunteers. They volunteer their time and their money and their talent because they believe in what a particular company does. And I think we're so fortunate right now to have a really strong group of people who really recognize the importance of theater and the arts in a community. And so when you have that, when you have strong leadership with a strong board of directors backing that leadership up, it's amazing. I mean, it really is, it's a different feeling than I've ever had with the company before. It feels much, I don't know how to explain it, like more joyous in a way.
Sure.
It's, I mean, obviously you're not worrying about the day-to-day financial and things like that, but it's also like you feel this great ensemble feeling of having a whole group of people working towards a common goal. And that's what it feels like at New Village Arts right now.
Looking back, when you started this idea, back in the late 90s, was this the vision for it? Did you think to yourself, this is what I want to do? Or was this kind of like, hey, we're going to do this for a while, see how it goes, and then move on to something else?
Yeah, I think looking back, I can recognize that this is what I always wanted, was to be running a small theater like this. But I don't think I ever realized how much work it was going to be. I don't think I realized how challenging it was going to be at times, not just for myself, but for my family and the people around me. And so that's kind of where the hiccups happen, where you think, oh yeah, no, this is what I can do with my life. And then you look at the many challenges of nonprofit work. You're not making a lot of money. You're working tons of hours. And you have a lot of people who you are responsible for. And so it's interesting. I went to a round table of artistic directors here in San Diego. And I think it may have been Barry Edelstein from the Globe who said it's a lonely job. And it's really true because you are the decision maker, and all of the decisions you make impact this huge number of people. And I take that very seriously. That's very important to me that I am living up to the trust that all these people put in me.
Thanks for listening to I Made It in San Diego. I wrote the show, Kinsey Moreland produced it, Scott Lewis edited it, and Adam Greenfield mastered and mixed the show. By the way, you heard Kristianne mention Jazzercise's office, and we've actually got an entire I Made It in San Diego episode featuring the local founder of Jazzercise. So be sure to go back and give it a listen if you haven't yet. The show you just heard was part of the Voice of San Diego podcast network. To hear other great shows like the Voice of San Diego podcast, I Made It in San Diego, a show all about the people behind the region's businesses, the award-winning Culture Cast, The Kept Faith, a San Diego sports show, and more, please visit voiceofsandiego.org/podcasts. If you'd like to sponsor any of the podcasts, please email Erin at voiceofsandiego.org. That's ERIN at VOSD.org.
Now back to our interview with Katie Bradle of Monarch School. So, Katie, we were talking before we turned on the microphones. You've been with Monarch for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
How did you start as a volunteer? How did you end up working at Monarch?
I started off as a teacher's assistant when I was in school to get my teaching credential. And very soon after that, I became a substitute teacher. And I've taught every single class at Monarch for different amounts of time, for 3 or 4 months at a time, during other teachers' maternity leaves. And I just fell in love with the students, but most of all, the mission of the school. And so right after I finished my teaching credential, I jumped over to the nonprofit side and was volunteer coordinator for 3 years, helping our community get connected to our students and helping them out with their time and tutoring and events. And now, as Director of Development, I connect the community resources to our students' needs.
So, Katie, the kids who go to Monarch School for their education, face a lot of challenges. The school's approach to education is a little different than other schools. So, can you talk to us about Monarch's 4 pillars of student learning and tell us more about the programs people can support by making a donation?
Mm-hmm. Monarch School has been around for 30 years, and in that time, we've consistently looked at our student needs and how we can best support them in their learning. And that is looking at all the different barriers that homeless students face that might block their success. So over time, we've developed that into 4 pillars, which are academic, social, emotional, and life skills. And the academic component is first and foremost, as we are a school, but it's very unique at Monarch in the sense that all of our students come in very behind grade level. They have significant gaps in their education. Some kids come to us having never been in school at all. So our teachers have to be really trauma-informed and aware of all of those different levels, and we rely on tutors and community support to give our students extra academic support. We have a math specialist on campus, literacy programming, all the things, extra things our students need to be on track. But all of that academic support would not be helpful if the student's emotional state is not available for learning. A lot of times our students have gone through or are going through multiple levels of trauma. So our emotional support team really focuses on what our students need to be able to talk through what's going on in their lives, maybe anger issues, feelings of abandonment. Some of our students have been through abuse. So we have professional student advocates who are mentors who meet with our students, support them, and really look at the whole child in connection to their learning. And with that emotional support comes the social aspect of what gets our students engaged and motivated to be at school and be on campus. And those are the things that get them excited about learning, like garden and nutrition, arts, athletics, all of these things that when they succeed in those areas, that trickles down to their emotional and academic side because they're succeeding, they're gaining confidence, and they're getting excited about coming to school, which before Monarch, a lot of students haven't had that excitement to come to school because of their situations. And then our last of the 4 pillars is life skills. And life skills is really our end goal with our students, is that they're able to take the tools that they've learned from their time at Monarch and apply them to all areas. So even a second grader learning how to have good hygiene and showering regularly and knowing how to advocate for themselves. And then all the way to a high school student who is graduating and going off to a 4-year university or a trade school and knowing, how to have time management, have a job, go to school, and take care of themselves. And so we have kindergarten through 12th grade at Monarch School, children 5 all the way to 18, and an alumni program and a parent support program. So we're really looking at the whole family and how the whole family can come together, work hard, and no matter how long or short they're at Monarch, learn from our programming there to not become homeless adults in the future. So any donations made to Monarch School go to these life-changing programs, these 4 pillars that look at all of those aspects of student learning, whether in the classroom, out the classroom, or the life skills that will take our students to the next step.
You can learn more about Monarch School at monarchschools.org.